Assalamualaikum everyone. On behalf of Beacon House, the organizer of School of Tomorrow events, I would like to welcome you to the 14th edition of SOT events, a world of tomorrow towards happier future. The non-profit SOT event series was launched by Beacon House in 2000 as part of its social responsibility and to help inform the direction of the organization while also engaging global communities in conversations shaping the future of schools and societies. It is a fully virtual event. My name is Kaval Malik, and I'm the Senior Manager Education Operations at Beacon House Head Office. And it is my great pleasure to welcome you today to this live session at the 14th edition of SOT Events. I would now like to introduce you to our workshop facilitator, Mr. Nathan Stringy. Nathan is a senior learning designer at Fielding International, where he works with innovative schools and educators around the world to create environments that foster creativity, collaboration, wellness, and belonging. Nathan serves as the USA country lead for Finnish NGO 100, a globally recognized leader in education innovation. He is also the founder of Exploration High School, a micro school in Minnesota. He lives in the Twin Cities with his wife and three young, lovely daughters. He has an exciting presentation for us today, focusing on designing the school of tomorrow, and I'm sure everyone will have many takeaways after this session. Before we begin, I would like to inform our viewers that you may ask questions at any time using the question comment function on the SOT website, or if you are tuned in through the Facebook page. We will address as many questions as possible during the last few minutes. We also have certificates of attendance organized for this session for all our viewers. You can leave your information on the SOT website after the workshop by clicking on the workshop certificate tab, and your certificate will be shared with you in due time. Now, without further delay, I'm handing the session over to Nathan. Over to you, Nathan.
Thank you, Kanwal. It is truly a pleasure to be here at the School of Tomorrow conference. As she mentioned, I am here representing Fielding International and 100, two unbelievable organizations that are constantly thinking about designing the School of Tomorrow. And we're here to talk about designing your School of Tomorrow, because what matters to you is what matters to your community, and that's what you want to bring with you after today. So I want to start with this comic. It's one of my favorites. I want you to look at it and read it and empathize with a young person who you may have known who might be thinking these same things. I have a lot of experience in the world of education, and so many experiences would resonate with these dogs talking about, why aren't we asked to think, innovate, and be yourself? Why are we asked to sit, stay, and heal? Why don't we have power? Why don't we have more say in our own educational journey? So I want to give you a little background. This is me almost 30 years ago. It's Kindergarten Nathan in 1992. 1992, it doesn't seem that far away, but I wanted to just set the context of what life was like back then when I graduated kindergarten. This was the computer we had at school. It was an Apple II. It had no internet access, of course. If I was curious about something and I asked a question to a teacher or my parent, and they didn't know the answer, what they would say is, Nathan, go find the right reference in your World Book Encyclopedia. And I did this very frequently. Also in 1992, the world's first ever text message was sent. Wow. Just 30 years ago. I want to fast forward to my daughter, my oldest daughter, Bea, just started kindergarten this fall. She will graduate kindergarten in 2022, exactly 30 years after I graduated kindergarten. And this picture here that we took just a couple months ago was taken on an iPhone. And you can imagine that this iPhone had the capacity to do all the things that Apple II computer, those encyclopedias, the ability to communicate, and so much more. And so a question that I want to ask you to reflect on here, because it's going to be important as we design the School of Tomorrow. In those 30 years, from 1992 to now, what changed? It's specifically what changed that's important to our thinking about designing the school of tomorrow. If you want to drop your comments in the chat feature, Kanwal is going to read a couple that really resonate with her. Kanwal?
So Mr. Riley is saying that research skills, that is important, and that is what that may have changed.
Any others that are jumping out?
So a few of our viewers have mentioned communication, how we communicate with each other. That has changed. We have a few other who are saying, again, with regards to communication, how we connect with each other around the world, how we are connected globally. That has also changed. So quite a
Absolutely.
few good responses, Nathan.
Absolutely. Yeah. So how we communicate with one another, how we connect with one another, how we build relationships, also how we access information, the research that was mentioned, what we can do with that information. And so as we think about designing the school tomorrow, all of this that has changed, the changing world around us, and perhaps thinking about how the changing job landscape of the future as well. But before we just think about what's changed, I also want you to think about, and you don't need to write this in the chat, but just think about this, reflect on it. What didn't change? Because you can imagine that there's things that were important to kindergarten Nathan that are very or equally important to kindergarten Bea and all the other kids around the world. So as we go into thinking about the school of tomorrow, and our driving question for today's session is, what does this mean? The fact that we've had so much change, but also things that haven't changed. What does that mean for designing the school of tomorrow? Here at home, we have a saying that nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And so before I go into the framework that I'm going to share and the tool I'm going to share about designing the school of tomorrow, I wanted you to know how much I care about designing the school of tomorrow and why. I've thought a lot about designing the school of tomorrow. First, as a teacher of 10 years, I taught middle and high school math. And I love teaching. I love the elements of building really strong relationship with my kids, being able to challenge them, being able to figure out what motivates them, and then create challenges that were aligned with their interests. But I also noted really early on in my teaching career that so much of the school ecosystem and the larger educational system wasn't supporting the needs of a lot of kids. A lot of kids were just going through the motions, or they felt like school was a place that they didn't belong, or they didn't have a say in their education, or they were bored. I saw a lot of kids just really feeling like they were being harmed by their educational experience. But I had a lot of success. I was able to be quite innovative within my classroom, and I won a national teaching award early in my teaching career, and it opened up a lot of doors. And one of the doors that it opened up was the opportunity to start a new high school, which just opened this fall. It's called Exploration High School, and we call it a public school for public good. We have some core values that you'll see here on the screen. Things like learn by doing, that everything is predicated on deep relationships and small cohorts, that we're connected to community, and we're working on things that address community need. And lastly, that any school needs to empower young people and provide them a real voice and leadership opportunities so they can become their full self. So I've thought about designing the school of tomorrow as a school creator, but also as an engagement specialist for Fielding International. Fielding International is an unbelievable organization that works to design schools around the world, both architectural services and educational design services, to really help communities, school communities, and districts align their environment with their vision. And we're going to talk more about this today. But also, I've come to you today with as a cross-pollinator with 100. If you're not familiar, go to 100.org. They just had their Global Innovation Summit in Helsinki, Finland. They pull together some of the most innovative ideas in education all around the world. So I've thought about designing the school of tomorrow as a cross-pollinator. But before I get much further, I wanted to be a little bit vulnerable, because a lot of what I've thought about designing the school of tomorrow has been on a more personal level. I've thought about designing the school of tomorrow as someone who's experienced a lot of suffering and loss. Both of these pictures here were taken during my university days. You'll see the one on the left with me without hair. I was going through radiation treatment for cancer my freshman year of college. Prior to that, I'd always thought I wanted to go through college and get a job that would make a lot of money. I hadn't really had a chance to think about purpose or fulfillment or meaning in my previous educational or life experiences. But my freshman year of college, it sort of hit me that there was something else that I should be searching for. And I started having conversations with my brother Dan, who you see on the right, on the boat together. And he was the one to really push me to reimagine education as a way to create a more equitable world. He started illuminating some of the things that were inequitable about our education system. And it was largely through those conversations that he pushed me to go into teaching, and which has informed my journey. He and I were early conversations around Exploration High School. And in 2014, after a chronic illness, he passed away. And I say this because I hold him and his spirit in everything I do to design the school of tomorrow, whether it's my own school or at schools around the world. Lastly, I've thought a lot about designing the school tomorrow as a parent. I have 3 beautiful young daughters, and I think of them in everything I do, and I want them, and when I talk with parents in my role at Fielding, we want our kids to be healthy and happy. We want our kids to live a life where they have joy and fulfillment. We want them to be successful in their lives. And so I bring all of this together in my own thinking about designing the school tomorrow. And I want you right now to reflect. When you think of the school of tomorrow, what's most important to you? Why is it important to you? What life experiences do you bring that make this conversation important? At Fielding International, we've done all of this work all around the world, and we've been able to put together what our understanding is how humans thrive. And we try to inform this in the work that we do to create environments where learners thrive. And what we found is that we can synthesize this, and today we're going to look at some examples of environments and ecosystems that support all of these things. We found that humans thrive when their lives are filled with purpose and joy, curiosity and mastery, love and belonging, safety and wellness, autonomy and opportunity, nature and beauty. We're going to circle back to these in a little bit. But this is a framework that I want to give you because I think it allows us to think about how we can, wherever we are, in whatever context we're in, how we can shape the school of tomorrow. This is an equitable, learner-centered ecosystem. And it has 3 components. It has vision, and vision we look at as what do you want to achieve as a school? Where do you want to go? What is your mission? What are your aspirations? What do you want your students leaving your school with? We also have educational program. How are you going to actualize that vision in the program that you have? What are the pedagogies you're going to use? What is the curriculum that you're going to use? What time structures and assessment tools are you going to use? You need those to align with your vision. And finally, we have the environment. What are the spaces that are going to actualize and catalyze your vision and align with your educational program. When we see school communities do the work to align their entire learning ecosystem, this is what we get. We get the ability for the ecosystem to adapt to the unique set of needs, gifts, interests, and life experiences of every single person in the ecosystem. That's students and teachers and parents and leaders and the community around it. This is what true equity in education means. The ability to adapt to the needs of every single person. And that is the framework that I want you thinking of wherever you are, whether you're a teacher or a school leader or a school board member. You want to be thinking about how you can align these components so that it can create this equitable, adaptable learning ecosystem. So this, you might say, is an example of a well-aligned ecosystem. But sadly, this is not the ecosystem we need right now. This is a well-aligned ecosystem for an antiquated paradigm. One that wasn't adapting to the needs of every single learner. This learning ecosystem is way past us. We need something new. And that's what we're here to talk about today. One of my favorite education organizations in the entire United States and perhaps the world is called Education Reimagined. If you're not familiar with them, go check them out. They have created, through this immense community engagement, a paradigm shift from an industrial age paradigm to a network age paradigm, what they call the learner-centered paradigm. And they have all these resources and language and lexicon to define what are the things that we need to be thinking about to create this adaptable ecosystem. So bringing it back to the work that we do at Field International and why we're here today. This is the most common ecosystem we see in schools around the world. We see websites or banners on the school that have a mission statement that say things like, our students are going to be complex problem solvers. They're going to be creative. They're going to be empathetic listeners. And they're going to be ready to excel at college and career. And then if we get a chance to go inside their school or talk to their kids, what we see are too much of the old paradigm. We see kids that don't have agency. We see teachers that are working in isolated classrooms without the ability to collaborate. We see curriculum that is highly standardized and rigid and not based on the interests or passions of the kids or the teachers. So this is a very common misalignment that we see all over the world. But I'm here to say there's good news, because you can do the work to create something different. And I want to share my best advice, and that is to go on an alignment journey. You can do this alone, wherever you are, with a small group of people in your community, but the more local, the better. The more connected to a single school, the better. The more diverse audience you can have, participation you can have with students, with teachers, with parents, with school leaders, but have a discussion, a real honest discussion around where you are in your own ecosystem. How closely does your vision currently align with your ed program and your environment? If you start with that sense of vulnerability and genuine openness to not being judgmental around where you are, but just looking at it as opportunities for becoming more aligned, what you're going to find is you're going to create action steps that you can do together to close that gap, to become more aligned. If you're curious around how you can do an alignment journey, either alone or with guidance, I would love to connect with you because we've done this. And when we see communities do this really authentically, we see real change, real transformation. I want to talk about a moment that I had about 5 years ago. It was when I was researching what the School of Tomorrow might be. I was looking to create my own school, Exploration High School at the time. And I started digging into schools that were really reshaping what schools could do. And I had an aha moment. Every single school that I found that was firmly in that learner-centered paradigm had done 4 things, not prescriptively, but they had done something in 4 domains. I want to share those with you because I think it's a really important way of looking at how you can look at change in your own community. What I noticed were every single school that had moved to a learner-centered paradigm had reshaped the roles of the people in the ecosystem. Oftentimes this meant that teachers were more like facilitators or guides, and learners were more learning with teachers, not being the recipients of knowledge from the teachers. There were reshaped roles for school leaders and community members and parents as well. Again, not prescriptively. I saw time changing. I saw breaking down of rigid time structures, oftentimes longer, more exploratory periods where teachers could collaborate and work together across disciplines. Time for more social emotional learning and reflection. Time to connect with community members and go out and do community work. The goals were shifting as well. Goals both for the institution of school and goals for the individual learner. Again, not prescriptively. Every school that had done this had done the hard work to connect with community, to figure out, listen, what people needed in their community within a very local context. And finally, the one that I kept seeing that was oftentimes a key disruptor of the old paradigm was around space. And I felt this as a teacher prior, that when I had my own classroom, it limited my ability to truly connect with my other peers and to come up with cool projects that would be across different disciplines or subjects. And I noticed that the spaces of these new paradigm schools were oftentimes, it didn't feel like school at all. And that's what I want to share with you today, because it's so important that we get the environment right, that third component of the ecosystem. So I'm going to connect this back to our thriving categories from earlier. What does an aligned learning ecosystem look like? It connects directly back to those thriving categories. Looks like this. This is a learning studio. And it has completely shifted what a classroom looks like. Oftentimes when we go into these, we see teachers like you see in the background there working with a small group of students, with 1 or 2 students working together. And you see the joy on the faces because they're working on things that are aligned with an educational program that is more putting difference making at the heart of learning, that is truly connecting to community and community problems and issues. Students are working on things of relevancy and authenticity. And when they're doing this, they're curious. They can work independently or in small groups because they know why they're doing the learning. And I tell you, when they are learning because they want to, that's when they get to true mastery. Not because they're compelled to or because they feel like they need to be obedient, but because they understand the why. And spaces can catalyze that. We need learning ecosystems to support love and belonging. And oftentimes in our schools that feel very institutional or boxy, we don't have spaces that kids can just be kids, that they can really take time to be themselves and get to know one another. Safety and wellness is on the mind of almost everybody around the world in education. Safety in the physical security sense, but also more of a holistic wellness, social emotional sense as well. Safety and wellness in body, mind, and spirit. And when we create spaces that allow kids to move, that are physically secure, that allow kids to be holistically safe, it gives them a chance to have autonomy, to break away, to have little nook or cave spaces, opportunities to do things that follow their interests and passion. And finally, connect to nature and beauty. All of us, humans, seek to be connected to nature, and we seek to be in beautiful places, both in the built environment and in the natural environment. There's all this research that shows the benefit of taking learning outside, connecting it with nature. And yet, in so many schools around the world, learning is seen as happening inside primarily. I'm going to show a second example here. The first one is, this is in Indonesia, which is a school that we've designed, and it has this beautiful landscape. And oftentimes you'll see teachers bringing classes outside and students doing anything you might imagine inside, but doing it outside. But this is in the tropics. And so every now and then we hear people say, oh, well, they can do it in the tropics, but we can't do it in this colder climate. But I promise you that even in Arctic or cold climates, people want to be connected to nature. This is one that we designed in Canada, which is connected to the nearby mountains and forests. And so often kids are going out with teachers and exploring that nature. And it adds such a vibrancy to the learning. We're going to close here with something that you can use right now. Because as fun as it is to imagine these holistically designed learning environments and thinking about a framework that you might be able to bring with you to your community to go on that alignment journey, I imagine you want something as an individual you can use right now. We just launched schoolpatterns.com as a free open source library of over 70 design patterns. These design patterns were what the founder of Fielding International, Randy Fielding, became known for in the early 2000s. That he was looking at case studies of reimagined learning environments all around the world, and he started seeing patterns of how we could create learning environments that truly did adapt to the unique needs of every single kid. That truly did create this learner-centered, equitable paradigm. And so I want to share this with you right now. But what a learning pattern is, what a design pattern is it addresses a common problem in our learning environment and then describes the core of the solution to that problem in such a way that you can use the solution a million times over without ever doing it the same way twice. So here you see an example of a cave space, which is one of our design patterns. And you see it manifest itself differently in different schools, but the core of the idea is still the same. So we're about to take some audience questions, but what I would love for you to do on the side is go to schoolpatterns.com and find one of those design patterns that really speak to you. There's over 70 on there, and all of them we have created align with one of our thriving categories. You can also scan this QR code to get there as well. Kanwal, if there's any questions from the audience right now, I would love to open it up for anybody.
Yes, thank you, Nathan. We actually have quite a few questions from our audience. And initially, when you asked about what changed and what did not change, a lot of teachers specifically responded to that question as well. So let's take the first question, which is particularly about the new age 21st century school. How does the school environment affect teaching?
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's a great question, and it absolutely affects teaching in that you can either design your environment to be mostly isolated, that kind of gives a teacher a single block or area within the school that they own that block. And that's historically been the way that schools have been designed, that teachers either have kind of a stake in the school, but what that creates is a lot of isolation, or it can create a lot of isolation. It creates a lot of barriers to do more collaborative things, which has ripple effects on what you can do with your curriculum pedagogies. So if you create an environment that allows for what you are getting before, teacher directed instruction, whatnot, classroom based learning, if you still create an environment that has that capability to have those things, but also for teachers to connect with peers and connect with environments that support things like breakout rooms, support things like learning commons where kids can do some writing on the writable surfaces and share ideas, and then come back into an environment to do more whole group things. When the environment has the ability to be more adaptable, oftentimes what we see is diverse spaces. So you have those learning studio classroom spaces, but you also have breakout spaces like small group rooms and cave spaces to support wellness, and you have commons that can support that breakout style of kids going and doing independent work. And so it has the ability to catalyze a whole multiple modality of teaching and learning. Whereas a lot of times, what at least when I was teaching, my experience is within my sort of owned classroom, it limited some of those things that I was able to do.
Great, great. I do agree. And building on that, our audience also would like to know, because it's very well connected to what you have just explained, that how can we achieve it 21st century school teaching practices in an old traditional building,
Yeah.
perhaps with small places, small classrooms,
Mhm.
not a lot of room to collaborate. What
Yeah.
would be your take on that?
That's a great question, and I love it. So, and I'm just going to answer by saying at Exploration High School, the school that we just launched here in Minneapolis, we actually moved in to an old Catholic school building from about 100 years ago. So it's we're facing that question right now. And so if you have that question, you want to connect with me, I'd love to go deeper in it. It is, if within those rooms that you have, try to do things like defront the classroom to make the area that you do have feel like more of a maybe more of a living room space, or more of a space of wellness. Um, if you can get agile furniture that you can kind of move around, to kind of use the spaces that you have really well. And then the other thing that I would say is, don't have teachers own each room. Try to create more of a collaborative space somewhere where it's and incentivize teachers using those spaces. Um, and then the last thing I'll say is, if there's hallways, we have a design pattern. One of the 70 on the schoolpatterns.com is called active hallways. This is something that we've done with schools that were in that more traditional school setting. And oftentimes in those settings, the hallways become just places to get from one place to another. They're not seen as learning environments. And so if there's anything that you can do to make those like corridors or hallways into learning spaces, it actually starts to create breakouts out of the classroom and make everything a little bit more connected. So that is a very practical thing that you can try to do, is to activate those hallways or corridors. Um, and of course, the local context and the actual building is going to determine what you can and can't do, in codes, of course. So there's deep context that goes with that question as well. But those are just some ideas that came to mind.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing. And yes, I do agree. Context is something that is extremely important here. So yes, another question: how important is it for all the stakeholders to be on the same page during the alignment journey?
Mhm. It's extremely important, but I think the only way that you get on the same page is is coming together and actually just talking and listening to one another. What's important to each other. I don't think you can make an assumption that everyone's on the same page unless you actually do the hard work to gather and do some really deep um, listening, empathetic listening, and setting values and norms around um, what we want for the future of our school. So it's important that you work towards getting on the same page and you create a common vision. But I also think there's a lot of hard work that goes into that, and you can't skip over that step.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much. And of course, our stakeholders, when we talk about communication, that is extremely important that all our stakeholders are, on the same page. Quite a few questions coming as we are taking more. This one is particularly is sort of, I would say, I really want you to address. How do we ensure students pay attention to us instead of their surroundings in an open classroom?
Mhm. Yeah, so I think that's where tying the environment into the learning program, into the education program, if if the education program is pillared on things like authenticity, which I define as important to the world, and relevancy, which I define as important to the learner, if those are the pillars of what the learning program is about, then they want to be a part of their own learning journey. And so it if it is about being compelled to do something that they don't care about, they will be distracted. They'll be distracted even if they're not in that environment. I promise you, kids can get just as distracted or tuned out in a classroom than they can in a reimagined learning environment. So I think, to me, it needs to tie back into that entire learning ecosystem, which includes that educational program. And when you're having the conversations with students, with teachers, with parents, with school leadership around what is our vision, at the same time we're having conversations around what is authentic learning mean to us, what is relevant learning mean to us. Kids, how do you want to be a part of your own educational journey, and then how do we create the environments that support all of that.
So again, including students, including learners in the process. We can't have them on the side and just,
Yes,
create
yes,
that.
yes. Yeah.
Okay, another one. So do you think change in environment should be initiated by individual teachers or the school should change environment first? What, in your opinion, should be the first step?
Yeah, yeah, that's a great question. It's not an either or. I have seen teachers who have been able to take their own classroom and reshape it, doing things like defronting the classroom, bringing in couches or bean bags to try to make it a more welcoming place. And going to the next step, I know of some teachers who have actually gone through a project to have kids design that environment with them, and even in some cases garner donations for some of the things inside the room to make it to bring it alive. But from a more holistic school standpoint, I do think it needs to tie into school leadership, school board, community. If you're looking at transforming more of even like the wing of a school or a major renovation. And of course, if you're going to create, say, a brand new campus or brand new facility at all, it has to tie into have a lot of backing and resources around it. So it really just depends on what you're hoping to achieve. But there's no need for a teacher to not start doing what they can within their own locus of control.
Great, excellent. Thank you for that. Okay, now since we are talking about teachers, audience would like to know what teacher competencies would be required in the school of tomorrow. So there are three questions that I have. I'll read them out to you so you can address them all together. What teacher competencies would be required in the school of tomorrow? Would there be any new subjects that are will be that will be taught in the school of tomorrow, and how would assessment look like in the
Mm.
school of tomorrow? Why I thought I should read them out to you all together, because they're all interconnected.
Yeah.
So about the subjects, teacher competencies, and then assessment in the
Oof.
new age class.
Yeah. Wow. Those are very big, three big questions. And I think that I can give my own opinion on any of these, um, and I'm happy to. I also think that this is like things like subjects and assessments are highly contextualized to the setting that you're at. Like what is the population of students you're working with? What are the resources that you have available? What is are you a project-based learning school, or are you trying to get out in the community and do community service work? So I think it really depends. I would, from a sort of very high level standpoint with assessments, trying to move away from um, traditional grading mechanisms that rank and sort, and trying to provide more formative assessments that are allow kids to really reflect on qualitative feedback, and let them grow with that feedback, and be less about standardizing things and then sorting kids based on those assessments. For subjects, I think the more that we can bring traditionally siloed disciplines together, um, doing more with like humanities, for instance, or within STEM or STEAM, and then giving larger blocks of time for teachers to collaborate, co-teach, and create authentic challenges within their domain, I think is a way to approach subjects. Again, without the context of the specific school, it's hard to know exactly, but just speaking in generalities. And as for teacher competencies, I think growth mindset, knowing that you have the ability to reshape your own understanding, is probably one of the top things. That you are going to make some mistakes if you are willing to be open. And just like you should be encouraging your students to be making mistakes when they're taking on hard tasks, you're going to need to do some of the hard work and make mistakes along your journey as well. So I think that that's a major competency that I would say. Um, we could do a whole session on teacher competencies,
Definitely.
but I
Yes.
think within the context of a learning environment that is more aligned with what we just shown, that is fostering creativity, belonging, wellness. I think a sense of collaboration and wanting to break free of that teacher on an island mindset that I know I saw a lot when I was in the classroom. Teachers were just fine sort of doing their own thing. I don't think that well aligns with my version of the school of tomorrow. So being able and wanting and desiring to be more collaborative, and the last thing I'll say is look for resources that are already existing. I mean, there's so many amazing things out there that you don't have to recreate the wheel. Like for instance, at 100, which pulls together those innovative ideas from all around the world, there's so many great resources that a teacher could use right now, or connect with a challenge on, say, climate change that you could plug in your students and get them excited, that you don't have to be pulling all the resource in. Because if there's one thing I know about teachers, they are busy. And
Yes.
I know that we don't just want to put another thing on their plate. So you really have to create a new plate and then fill it with things that matter.
Yes, teachers indeed are busy, and again, we cannot engage them in something that is not going to add value. So the plate has to be designed very, very carefully. I do agree. Okay, another one here, Nathan, is what are the three most important advantages of new pattern classrooms?
Mm. Hmm. Yeah. Um, I would say one would be it really allows kids to have agency, in that it a more connected campus is a safer campus because you have eyes on the street, so to speak. And so it allows kids to really have choice in what type of environment that they need in that moment, whether it's the type of seat they're choosing, or how the size of the environment they're in. Sometimes kids want to go into a place of small solitude for reflection. Other times they want to go into a big auditorium-like space and perform. But if we don't have those spaces that connect, it really stifles true agency. The second thing I would say, it's around wellness, really deep, holistic wellness for kids, that we give them a chance to, because we've given them the ability to have agency, that they are able to take a brain break. They are able to go move around. One of the things that we hear from kids all the time when we look at misalignments within their own school ecosystem is they say, we sit like 90% of the day, and that's not aligned to what we want for our kids in terms of wellness and health. And then the last thing, I think, doing this environment, it really does truly align to complex problem solving, in that it really catalyzes a more holistic approach to learning, that you're able to bring in authentic and relevant instruction, pedagogies, and curriculum. And so when we look at something like the World Economic Forum and they look at the skills of 2025, and complex problem solving just remains right at the top, it's not impossible to do complex problem solving inside of a traditional classroom model, but it's a lot harder. And so I think that's the last thing I would say for that.
Great. Thank you. And learner agency, of course, that is something that here we are working on. It's not a new concept, of course, but now consciously making an effort to promote learner agency. Actually, one of our sessions tomorrow is on the power of learner agency. Four of our students from Beacon House Schools will be presenting their projects, something that they initiated themselves and then executed with only some support by their school facilitators. So I would like to, I would like for our audience to tune into that session, and how Nathan has very nicely explained what learner agency is and how important it is in this day and age. Another one, Nathan. So they want to know about Exploration High School. How is it different from any other school, and is it the real school of tomorrow in your opinion?
It's an example of a school of tomorrow, and there are so many around the world. There's great pockets of innovation literally happening all over the world. But yeah, I would say it's an example of one. I think one of the things that really makes it special is kind of the holistic ecosystem that we've created, because we did the hard work of listening to kids, listening to community, what they need, and we're continuing that as an operational school. One of the things that, we're still in COVID times, one of the things that our science teacher did right away was have them research the science of COVID and then present to our board around what our school policy around COVID should be related to masks and potential vaccinations. And it was amazing. That gave them ownership of the decisions that will come in the future if we get, say, another wave. And so that's just an example of giving young people a true voice in their school, which, again, it takes time, it takes commitment, it takes intentionality. But if you let young people truly have a voice from both an institutional level and a classroom level, you get amazing results.
I do agree. And again, goes back to the power of learner agency, giving them voice and see what they can do with that voice. Okay, so because our audience is not just teachers, Nathan, generally, globally, a lot of people are watching your session. They would like for you to shed some light on school ecosystem. What does it actually mean in the school context, and perhaps someone who's not part of the school structure?
Yeah. So I think one of the things that wasn't clear in the school ecosystem is how it needs to connect with the community around it, and how we need to bring in community members to inform what we want for our learners and what they're seeing that they need from an external community standpoint. And what I've noticed is when communities do that, oftentimes local businesses or local government agencies, they start to have more of an interest in connecting and providing opportunities for young people. And so I think it probably best falls in the vision category of the learning ecosystem. Your vision, I would imagine, is going to promote community connected learning. And like you saw that for Exploration High School, that was one of our four pillars, was community-based learning.
Great. Great. So, one last one, Nathan, before we move on to your message that you wanted to end on.
Yeah.
This is related to COVID. Of course, school environment looks completely different during COVID, and even post COVID, a lot of schools are now struggling with what the normal used to be. So, the question is, post COVID, classes are making adaptability to the new learning environment a complex phenomenon. How can a teacher do justice to all? Kindly suggest some practical steps.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that I can just bring it back to the learning, the reimagined learning environment, is that within a typical classroom, it's pretty boxy, and you're trying to squeeze a lot of people into a small box. And that's within a larger school that often underutilizes a vast majority of its space. It doesn't look at hallway spaces, learning spaces, which can be up to 30% of an entire school building. It oftentimes isn't using big spaces like a big auditorium because they're not accessible. They're not connected to the larger learning ecosystem. So what I would just come back and say is that when you truly go in the direction of a more holistic, connected learning environment, the advantage of that versus the isolated model, it's vast. And so I don't know if that directly answers the question that was asked, but what I can advise you as a teacher, anyone looking to change, is go look at those design patterns and see what does apply to me right now. What can I do to do a small, bring to my principal or bring to my superintendent or my school board an idea to make a learning community from this wing of our school, because you can do it without a huge amount of resources. So there's things that you can do that don't require a huge school bond or $1 million renovation. You can do small things relatively easily as well.
Great. No, I agree. Of course, contextually, everyone is facing their own challenges and whatever they can do. And the resources that you have shared, of course, I'm sure our audience will go through them and benefit. So on that note, Nathan, we are going to stop taking questions. There were quite a few, to be very honest, but we are running short on time. We only have a few more minutes left. So I would like for you to conclude the session as you wanted to end. So over to you again.
Excellent. So I just wanted to provide any contact information. If anything resonated today, and if you're looking for a question to be answered or potential guidance to move along that alignment journey, I'd love to connect with you. I have my email here. You can connect with me on Twitter or LinkedIn. Fielding International works all over the world. We have studios in Minnesota, Michigan, Rhode Island, Maryland, in the United States, and also one in Singapore. And our mission is to make learning better by improving learning environments. And the last thing I wanted to say, and this is the most important thing to me, is I want to leave you with one love. And to me, one love is the way I live my life. It's how I lead as a dad. It's how I lead as a community engagement specialist. And whatever thing I'm doing, I lead with one love. And that's the notion of unconditional love and respect for all people, regardless of anything. And so I want you to know that wherever you are, by participating, by listening today, I have love for you, and I want to share that love for you. And I hope that you leave today feeling like you are loved. And I hope you leave today trying to pass that love on to someone else. Thank you so much. Have a great day.